All right, let's talk about one of the most debated foods out there, soy. Is it this amazing superfood that's great for you, or is it some kind of hormone-wrecking monster in disguise? Well, the answer is kind of fascinating, and it all starts in a pretty unexpected place.
So I've got a question for you. What in the world could a Ford car from the 1930s possibly have in common with, say, the chocolate bar that might be sitting in your kitchen right now? Sounds like a trick question, right?
The answer, believe it or not, is soybeans. Turns out Henry Ford was totally obsessed with them. I mean, he was using soy oil to make the enamel paint for his cars, and even used soy powder to create plastic parts. But he didn't stop there. He was also a huge pioneer in getting soy into our food, and that idea just exploded. Now it's a hidden ingredient in thousands of things we eat every day. So you have to wonder, how did this one single bean become so crucial? Going from car parts to a staple in our global food system. Well, the secret is all in what it's made of. Soybeans are absolute powerhouses. First off, they are packed with high-density complete protein. That means they've got all the essential amino acids our bodies can't make on their own. They're also full of those good fats. And then there are two other key things, something called lecithin and these plant compounds called isoflavones, which can kind of mimic the hormone estrogen. It's this wild combination that makes soy useful for, well, almost everything. Let's talk about lecithin for a second. It's what's known as an emulsifier. So you know how oil and water just don't mix, right? They separate? Well, lecithin is like a magic matchmaker. It has a special structure that can grab onto both fat and water at the same time, forcing them to blend together. This is literally the reason your chocolate bar is so perfectly smooth instead of some grainy separated mess. It's in everything from salad dressings to protein powders. Okay, so now we know why soy is everywhere. But with all that popularity came a ton of scary headlines and myths that just refuse to go away. So let's dive right in and confront these controversies head on, and we're going to use solid science to figure out what's fact and what's fear. This is probably the biggest, most common fear you hear about soy. The idea that because it has these plant-based estrogens, it could actually raise your risk for breast cancer. So what does the real evidence have to say about that? So the whole concern comes from those isoflavones we mentioned, also called phytoestrogens. And yeah, some really old studies in rodents suggested there might be a link to cancer. But here is the critical part. Our bodies process soy completely differently than rodents do. And when you look at the large-scale human studies, they tell a totally different story. I mean, check this out. A massive study of 335,000 women found absolutely no increased risk. In fact, a 2019 analysis found that for women who had already survived breast cancer, eating more soy was actually linked to better survivor rates and a lower chance of the cancer coming back. And look, this isn't just some fringe opinion. We're talking about major health organizations like the American Cancer Society and the World Cancer Research Fund. They all agree that soy is safe to eat, even for breast cancer survivors. On this, the science is really, really clear. All right, next up. The myth that soy is feminizing for men. You've seen this all over the internet, right? The idea that it'll crash your testosterone levels and mess with fertility. Let's put that one under the microscope. Again, the finger gets pointed at those phytoestrogens. But the actual science here is just overwhelming. A huge review in 2021 looked at 41 different clinical studies. Their conclusion? Soy does not change testosterone or estrogen levels in men, period. And this totally lines up with what we see in the real world, right? I mean, populations in Asia have been eating a ton of soy for centuries, and they show perfectly normal hormonal health. Okay, the last big health myth we need to tackle is about your thyroid. Can eating soy mess with this super important gland and cause issues like hyperthyroidism? Now this one's a little more nuanced. The worry is that the isoflavones in soy could interfere with how your body uses its thyroid hormones. But a 2019 review found that for healthy adults with normal thyroid function, soy causes no significant changes at all. There is, however, one very specific group that needs to be careful. People who already have a mild underlying thyroid problem and aren't getting enough iodine. For that small group, a high soy intake could potentially push their thyroid out of balance. But for almost everyone else, it's just not a risk. And hey, even for that very specific group, it doesn't mean soy is off limits. The advice is actually pretty simple. First, make sure you're getting enough iodine in your diet. And second, if you're on thyroid medication, just don't have soy for about 2 to 3 hours after you take your pill. That's it. It just prevents any interference with how the medicine gets absorbed. So after busting all those myths, what does soy's final report card look like? Let's stack up all the good against the not so good.
When you look at the pros, they're pretty compelling. It's a complete protein, it's good for your heart, it helps out the good bacteria in your gut, and there's even some research that it can help with fertility. And the cons? Well, for most people, they're really minor. It might give you some gas, and it can slightly reduce how you absorb minerals at first, but your body gets used to it. A super tiny percentage of people are allergic. And like we just talked about, there's that one specific caution for a small group with thyroid issues. For the average person, it's pretty clear the benefits really outweigh the negatives. So, from a personal health standpoint, soy looks pretty great. But the story doesn't end there. We need to zoom way, way out, because the biggest problem with soy has nothing to do with our hormones and has everything to do with our planet. Just take a look at this number for a second. 22,000. What do you think that could possibly represent? That is the number of square kilometers of the Amazon rainforest that was cleared just to grow soy in just over a decade. This massive scale of deforestation displaces indigenous communities and destroys vital habitats. And it's all driven by our massive global demand for soy, not just for our tofu and soy milk, but mainly to feed livestock for the meat industry. So after looking at all of this, our bodies, the planet, where do we land? What's the final verdict on soy? When it comes to our health, the science is really clear. Soy isn't the villain it's been made out to be. The scary myths about cancer and hormones, they've been pretty thoroughly debunked. The real challenge, the true conversation about soy, is about our planet. Given its enormous environmental footprint, the question isn't really, is soy good or bad for me anymore? The question we should all be asking is, how can we make it a hero for the planet instead of a problem? That's the real puzzle we need to solve.